Welcome to another edition of Inform Kenya, our Nairobi Baptist Civic Education series. And today we will be looking at the relationship between business and politics and how the political and election season affects business and how business affects that. Our guest today is the chairman of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, or KEPSA Foundation, and he's part of the Kenya Daima, which deals with matters political. Welcome, Engineer Patrick Obath.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Tell us a bit about KEPSA Foundation.
KEPSA Foundation was formed about 8 years ago. And the reason it was formed was that the KEPSA itself was focusing a lot on advocacy for business. And we realized that as a business community, a lot of companies tend to have sustainability programs, corporate social responsibility programs within the community, and KEPSA didn't have one.
Okay.
So we decided to then form KEPSA Foundation with a few things in mind. One was to sort of engage KEPSA in terms of community programs.
Okay.
And then we also had an ongoing activity, which was an interest in ensuring that you have peaceful elections after the 2007 post-election violence that we had.
Yes.
So we had that ongoing already.
Okay.
And that program, which is Kenya Daima, was then uploaded into the foundation as part of its of the various pillars that it is operating under. So operating with. So Kenya Daima is one of the is more or less the elections and political aspect of the activities that the foundation is doing.
Okay. Yeah. So from what you're saying, then Kenya Daima actually has a life beyond the election cycle.
It does. It does.
What does it do?
What it does, it keeps its ears on the ground to hear what is going on. And quite a long time before the elections, what we do is we begin to understand what the narrative that is shaping up to a particular election. Right? And that narrative sometimes takes a bit of work.
Yeah.
So you begin to listen to the outgoing government, listen to the people who are likely to want to be the next people on the ballot, and listen to what they're saying. And you begin to sort of say, okay, these are the likely areas that they might want to get engaged in as part of their manifestos and so forth. And also on the ground, when the when wananchi are talking, what are their concerns, right? And if you look at, for example, this particular election, people are talking about the economy, they're talking about all those things.
Yeah.
But the key thing that the conversation at the lower level is actually despair. When you consider that Kenya, the average Kenyan is actually in a state of despair. The issue of the price, the high prices of food, fuel, the lack of jobs, infrastructure collapsed, whatever it is, and water, everything else, that's a state of despair. And we believe that the construct of this politics for this election is all going to focus on that despair.
Okay.
Yeah. So every time, for about 2 years before the elections, we activate ourselves and begin to understand what that, that overarching single word that we'd like to sort of inform the discussions that we have with the different players in the electoral field.
So then what then Kenya Daima does is now to start bringing what they've discovered, say on the ground, and start talking to the stakeholders.
What we do with that is then we say, what narrative do we as responsible business people want to give to answer to what we are hearing?
Okay.
Right. So in the light of that, we then develop what we call a manifesto from the business.
Okay.
So this is what we want whoever it is that is going to turn up as a presidential candidate, because that's the level at which we operate, plus the governors as well.
Yeah.
We tell them this is what we want.
Yeah.
This is what we'd like you to take on board to address those issues that we feel are necessary for the sustainability of business in this country.
Okay.
And when you talk about business, it is from the top to the bottom.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
We understand, we listen to our members, we listen to their customers, and they give us all that information.
Yes.
So we are actually talking across a very broad gut of the economy.
So in essence, then, what you're saying is that the voice of Mkenya Daima is a very strong voice.
It is a very strong voice, yes.
Okay, interesting.
The other thing as well about Mkenya Daima, it is not around the business community only.
Yes.
We actually work with the religious leaders as one of the constituents. We work with civil society. We work with specific groups, women, youth,
Okay.
and they're all present at the table
Okay.
in terms of the discussions that we have. And they also inform the sort of the genesis of this narrative that we have, like for despair. It was actually informed by us having discussions with all those people.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's, I think that's a good, because again, you know, when people hear KEPSA, then they only think, you know, the business sector and so, for instance, you know, the idea that, you know, Mkenya Daima is, you know, slanted towards safeguarding, you know, the political interests of the business people.
Now, the one thing that happens is that if you look at the hierarchy that leads up to KEPSA, every business sector has got their own association.
Okay.
And that is the one that influences and probably plays politics.
Yeah.
Politics is a very personal thing.
Yeah.
So an individual business may have a leaning and support a particular political party and so forth. But as you get up from the business associations and into KEPSA itself,
Yes.
KEPSA is completely apolitical.
Okay.
We do not support a political party. We do not subscribe to the to the manifestos of any political party. We represent the business community at large. And therefore, what we do is we take away all the politics,
Yeah.
but you want to influence the general outcome of politics.
Okay.
So we don't focus on, say, speaking to Azimio or speaking to Kenya Kwanza. We've had both of the presidential candidates come to our breakfast at our invitation, and then we spent 90% of the time telling them what we want.
Okay.
And then after they've listened to us, we tell them, okay, now you come and talk and
Yeah.
tell us what you think.
Okay.
So it's the other way around. It's not
Yes.
the traditional political thing
Yes.
where they come and they tell you what they're going to give you,
Yes.
and then after that they leave.
Okay.
So we actually structure the engagement so that we are presenting to them what we would like.
Okay.
And it's not because they're Azimio or they're whatever it is. Those are the two key parties,
Yes.
and we've had discussions with both of them.
Okay. And so from what you've described earlier, you have a forum like that and you basically tell them, this is what's happening on the ground, this is what is happening in the business sector, and this is what we believe should be the conversation out there.
Absolutely. So the manifesto is one that we have actually been working on it for about 8 months.
Okay.
So from the time we had started having those conversations, we picked up what the issues are within the business community, all the way down to the to the grassroots, using all our connections and listening to the religious groups and civil society. We had conversations around with them. And when we talk about despair, this is not something that the business community has put together.
Yeah.
It was actually crafted together with the whole team.
Yes.
So that issue of despair is one that we all understand has got to be addressed
Yes.
in whatever manner. And within the religious community, the religious circles, they have to deal with that
Yes.
based on how they know how to message best. So we don't give a message.
Yeah.
We understand the construct what the issue is that we believe
Yeah.
might create division, that might have a bad election. And therefore, each of the constituents that you discussed with then takes that particular thing and crafts their messaging so that it answers to that
Yeah.
and tries to defray issues. I think in 2012, the 2012 elections,
Yeah.
we all talked about peace.
Yes.
And I think the biggest impact that had within for the elections that year was that about early in the year, about say November, December, the year before the election, 2011, we started putting out this idea that we want peaceful elections,
Yeah.
not like 2007.
Yeah.
The politicians were still very mad; they're sort of going at each other. But because the religious community, the Christians, the Hindus, the Muslims, all of them actually started talking about peace
Yeah.
in their sermons. And every single, Sundays it would be peace, it would be peace, it would be peace. Within 3 months, by about March, April,
Yeah.
the political parties and the rallies were also talking about we want a peaceful election.
Yeah.
So you can understand this repeated affirmation.
Yes.
And that's really the process that we are keen on. That repeated affirmation then gets people thinking, we must talk about a peaceful election.
Okay.
And coming from a pulpit in the church, that actually is a very strong lead.
Yes.
To the to the congregants of that particular that particular faith, right?
Yeah.
And that lead is what can actually make the difference in terms of how the political landscape shapes up towards the elections.
Okay.
And that really is how Kenya Daima works. We don't do it. We get a coalition to take a message, and then each one interprets it in their own way and then delivers it to their community.
So in other words, you're a catalyst, initiator kind of approach to all this.
Absolutely.
Are there other interventions that Kenya Daima does in terms of peace building?
We work, we do a lot of media engagements, right? All talking about the Kenya Daima message as it comes from us as a business community.
Yeah.
But we always appreciate and focus on the fact that it is not around the business community only.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking about to you now.
Yeah.
It is actually built around a lot of people who are interested in having a peaceful transition.
Yeah.
So we go to the media, we talk about it. We have messaging to all our membership.
Yeah.
So cascading down through the business associations, through the businesses, and the way that works is that it then goes to their workers and people who work there or their customers and so forth, and that then gives us, from the business side, that's the wave we generate.
Okay.
Right? Just like from the from the religious community, they look at their congregation and the wave goes down that way.
Yeah.
Now you can imagine if all these meets within the population, the impact that that has.
Yes.
And that really is what we desire to have in terms of getting getting an impact that is positive to the outcomes of the elections.
Okay. The ordinary voter, how does Kenya Daima engage with the ordinary voter?
We don't directly work with the ordinary voter, apart from going through the media, and hopefully that reaches them.
Yeah.
We, getting involved with the voter directly, you will then be asked the question, which side do you belong to? And who are you coming here to tell us about this?
Yes.
And we are hoping that having people giving the message in their in their organizations, that way it is a discussion within an organization, within an environment that everybody says it's not about political parties, it's about my responsibility as an individual.
Okay.
And one of the big messages that we're having with people is, it is my responsibility. Ni wajibu wangu. Right? That was in the last election.
Yes.
Now, this election you're saying, nitatenda wajibu wangu, which means I will enact my responsibility. And that's the message we're sending out as Kenya Daima, is people to actually act out their responsibility.
Yes.
And what's the responsibility of the Kenyan? There are key things.
Yeah.
First of all, look at the kind of leader that you want. What should you be looking out for? And it's all about Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Yes.
Right? So you look at uprightness of the leader, selflessness, integrity. Yeah, those are the issues that you need to look at and say, it is my responsibility to ensure that I elect a leader who meets the following criteria.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that criteria is set up in the Constitution. It is something that every Kenyan should exercise. And if that leader doesn't meet that, then it is your duty to ensure that you don't elect them.
Yes.
Right? And so it means that as a citizen of this country and as a voter, I must have a clear conscience of the kind of leader that I want.
Yeah.
And that's a message we give.
Okay.
To the whenever we talk. It is your responsibility to go out and effect the responsibility that you have.
Okay. So you've talked about Chapter 6, and it's not the most famous chapter in our Constitution. Are there like repercussions if the voters don't pay attention to matters integrity when they're choosing a voter?
There's a lot of repercussions, and it's all around the quality of life that a voter will have. The quality of life that I have is going to be impacted upon by the kind of leader I choose. And we all moan about the government, this and the government, that, and the government is not doing this and so forth. But who is the government? The government is the person that I, as a voter, cast my vote to choose. So when we choose leaders who are corrupt,
Yeah.
leaders who are going to take money out of the coffer, leaders who are going to pass laws that favor them or give them more, and I'm talking about our August House,
Yes.
where the salaries have been going out till they're the richest people in the Commonwealth, right? And this economy cannot afford that kind of of pay.
Yeah.
In a lot of Commonwealth countries, which is what I'd like to use, a lot of people who are working at the MCA level and so forth actually don't get paid. They do it because that's your civic duty,
Yeah.
right? But here, it's not a civic duty. It's my duty to go there, get my vote in, get voted in, and then I can begin to get back the money that I used in elections, right? And until the leaders are right, the economy is not going to work.
Okay.
You have all these CSS and people like that who have all these principles, all these things they're supposed to do. They make policies and everything else. But who delivers those policies? The people who have been elected to ensure that it happens
Yes.
is the problem. When you look and say that we are unable to get the IEBC, the EACC, and all these bodies to work, it's because the same people who we have elected choose to go, and if they are impacted, they want to squash that particular organization so that they cannot deal with them. So you find that people have clipped the wings of EACC as they do the legislation,
Yes.
although the constitution says what they should do.
Yes.
But the legislation that now makes them effect what they should do is very weak. And people really love going to sort of, we are going to tame these guys, NCIC, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission. I mean, they need to be able to sort of mete out some kind of, some kind of retribution to the
Yes.
people who are doing hate speech and so forth. What happens? Not very much. We need those institutions to be strengthened. And it is the leaders
Yeah.
who we put in that will give them that ability to then change the narrative and the culture of this country towards responsibility as people in power.
Okay. So in other words, then, as a voter, if I don't pay attention to that, then really I'm shooting myself in the foot.
Don't complain about the outcome of the election. Don't complain about the government you get, because it is you who has either elected them or not exercised your right, and the wrong people have put them in. So you have to exercise your right. And I don't know, there's almost 20-something odd million Kenyans who are eligible
Yes.
to register as voters.
Yes.
The number actually is only about 50 million. So there's 7 million,
Yes.
another 50% more who could actually make that big difference
Yes.
if they actually exercise their
The-
right to vote.
Okay.
So it is very important that every single person who has got the ability to vote registers to vote and then exercises their responsibility. But we have to tell them that you have to look at the requirements of the Constitution. Because the Constitution is what we, as the citizens of Kenya,
Yes.
put to guide us and guide the country into the future. And for people to live on that Constitution, they have to follow it.
Yes.
And they have to meet the expectations of that Constitution.
Okay. Now we'll come back to this year. How does it's generally believed and experienced that our elections have a way of disrupting business, disrupting the economy. How does then Kenya Daima try and reduce that kind of negative impact?
What we've seen since 2012, when Kenya Daima started, with peace, and then, mimi ni mwenye nchi instead of mimi mwananchi. That, those are the kind of messages that we're telling people, take control of what goes on. We found that the indicator we use, which is the is the GDP growth, yeah, in 2007, we were before the elections,
Yeah.
the GDP growth in Kenya was about 6.97%. After that election, it dropped down to a negative 0.4.
Wow.
That was the impact of that election for the best part of that year, 2008. Our GDP growth was minus 0.4. And then it grew up until about 6 point something. But in 2012, when we had the election, it went from 6.9, 5.9, and dropped down to 4.
Okay.
And you're finding, and in 2017, it was a very small drop. And if you take that as a measure
Yeah.
of the business community doing whatever they have to do,
Yes.
it means that elections now are no longer as disruptive of business as they used to be. And all because I think people now believe that the judicial system works because of what
Yes.
happened in 2017,
Yes.
right? And all these things that have been put in place by the Constitution of 2010 are gradually restoring confidence that that elections are no longer violent, they are not disruptive as they used to be, but business still takes a cautious look,
Yeah.
and all they do is say, okay, fine, we will let the politicians play from round about now, April, May, until round about September, October. That's the political period, 6-7 months.
Yeah.
So we will stand by, let the politicians do what they want to do. We'll run our businesses normally. So any investments, any whatever it is, we know now what happens during elections.
Yes.
And business, I think, is now fairly well into the cycle.
Yes.
6-7 months, every
Yes.
5 years, you understand politics, let the politicians take center stage. Let's watch. Let's make money whilst we can on them. Guys who do T-shirts, caps, whatever it is,
Yes.
are making a killing.
Yeah.
And then after that, we go back to normal.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in the business.
Yeah.
Going beyond the elections, because earlier you mentioned that Kenya Daima does not only focus on the run-up to the elections. How do you then engage post-election? How does Kenya Daima inform the political space?
What we look at is we look at now the manifestos of the different, of whoever's coming. And we then turn that back into KEPSA. Because now it is actually holding the political parties or the government that has come into account.
Okay.
And that is the role that KEPSA does on behalf of the business community.
Okay.
So ours is to make sure that that there's a peaceful transition between one government and the next, one political party and the next. Once that is done, then we have mechanisms now, which is run by KEPSA mainly, that engages the government to check whether the manifesto they gave us is actually being followed.
Okay.
And so forth. And we then create a scorecard and we work with the government
Yes.
to make sure that that happens.
Okay.
Yeah? But the one thing that we're looking at the moment, and we're talking about it, is that we would actually want the party, the political party or the coalition that comes in to develop their own scorecard.
Yeah.
So we can continue that conversation. Now that is a conversation we're having now. Both of the big political coalitions are saying that yes, we are going to have our manifesto, but we're going to have our scorecard and hold us accountable. We are interested to see what that scorecard will look like.
Okay.
And how we can hold them accountable.
Okay.
Because if that happens, and as Kenya Daima, we might even go ahead and start taking their scorecard and make it a public thing.
Yeah.
And we'd love to do that.
Yes.
If they can give us a scorecard and say, hold us, judge us
Accountable
by
to
this.
this.
This
Yeah.
is what we promised to do.
Yes.
And it's over 5 years. And we will then say, so what steps are you going to take in the first year,
Okay.
second year, third year? And we can be looking at them on the scorecard from that time.
And so, in other words, then at the end of the first year, you'll hold them accountable for this was supposed to have been done by now,
Yep.
and so on.
What have you done?
Coming back to what you had mentioned earlier, the manifesto that you give and say this is what is being said on the ground. These are the concerns, and so these need to be in your manifesto. What happens then if they don't address those, if they don't incorporate those?
We are versatile as an organization, right? The foundation and KEPSA together. We actually engage with the government when they're doing their medium-term plans, right? And whenever they're doing a medium-term plan, which is a 5-year MTP 5, I think they're going to do version 1, 2, 3. I think it's 4 is just finished, so it's 5. We actually ensure that that manifesto that we gave them is also included in there.
Okay.
So that despite if they don't take it as the top agenda, we're going to make sure it is in there. And then we begin to follow it up and make sure that the government is delivering on it.
Okay.
So we don't let them rest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know because, you know, it's easy for such things to be ignored. Now, there's a suspicion that is out there, and you know how those Kenyan rumors go, that business plays both sides, you know, so that they sort of, you know, take care of their interests post-election.
As an apex body for business, we don't. The membership of KEPSA, which are the business associations, do not do that. Individual businesses have their own agenda.
Okay.
And some of them will actually support a particular candidate. That is the role of the owner of the business. They can do what they like.
Yeah.
But when it comes to talking about the business community in totality, then it is not playing both ways. We are giving one message, which is our own message to them. We are not trying to say, no, we'll support you if you do this, or we'll support you if you do that. No. Our message is a common one to them.
Yeah.
And and we learned that lesson in 2007. The main reason why we got where we were was that the protectors of the dignity of the country, which is basically the faith-based organizations and civil society, at that time had taken sides. And they lost their, they lost the command that they had in terms of shaping public opinion and being the people's police, as it were, and making sure that things are done, so that they could speak to the politicians straight in the eye. In 2007, both civil society and the religious teams lost that, and they could not go and tell the protagonists then that stop doing this and stop doing that, because they'd actually taken sides one way or another. Different churches took different sides.
Yeah.
And so the business community actually stepped in and went and met the three, which was Raila, Kibaki, and Kalonzo. And we told them, again, same as we're doing now, we gave them each the same message. They didn't like it, but we could not afford not to do it at that time. And they agreed at that time they're going to meet. Because we had told them, guys, you must become statesmen. Rise above politics, because this country is going to burn. Rise above politics and talk to each other. You are the ones who can solve this. We can't as a business community, but we are telling you that this country is going to burn if you don't. And they agreed to talk. And then Kofi Annan came in and took that process. We learned very quickly as an apex body that we do not take sides. Because otherwise you lose your authority to speak to any of those people. And we have maintained that up to now.
Okay.
So we do not, as a business community, as the apex bodies and the individual business bodies, subscribe to a particular party.
Okay.
But our individual members, individual businessmen are free. They are citizens of Kenya, and they can do what they like.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now, in terms of your parting shot, what would you tell somebody who is trying to make a decision about how to determine, you know, the best candidate in the August election, how to make a decision, you know, with all the voices that are out there? What would you advise a voter as your parting shot? You can look at that camera as you do.
For each of the potential candidates that you are going to look at their history. Look at the stuff that comes out whenever so and so you talk about that person. Listen to how they speak to you. Are they inviting you, or are they telling you? Are they pushing you into a corner and say you must do it because we tell you X, Y, and Z. The candidate that comes to you and tells you, we want to speak to you, we want to sit down and listen to you, and we can then deliver on your behalf. The candidate who is coming out as a servant leader, not a bully, the one that is going around and bullying you as a voter. Those are the kind of leaders, servant leaders, who are here to work for you, not to work for themselves or what they think should be done. That is the candidate that you should go for. We say, kagua kabla ya kuchagua. Na ukishakagua, nenda uchague.
Well said, well said, well said. So investigate before you make your decisions. Thank you so much, Engineer Patrick Obath. Thank you so much for your time. And we pray that as you continue engaging, that you'll see the fruits of what you're doing. And all the best as you engage as Kenya Daima, but also as KEPSA Foundation and the KEPSA as a large organization. We appreciate your time, and thank you for the insights that you have shared.
Thank you for allowing me to share your platform, and I hope that the messages we've given will go down well with you people.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again for joining us in Inform Kenya. And as we look forward to the August elections, I think the message has come out very clearly. You have a responsibility as a citizen of this country. Go out and carry out that responsibility. God bless you.